When Mani Ratnam and Kamal Haasan reunited after nearly 4 decades for Thug Life, their expectations were sky high. Their last collaboration, Nayakan, wasn't just a film. It was a cultural phenomenon that redefined what Indian gangster cinema could be. So when these two titans announced they were making another crime drama together, audiences naturally expected fireworks. What they got instead was something far more subversive, far more challenging, and arguably far more interesting from an artistic standpoint. Thug Life bombed. Critics were harsh, audiences stayed away. But buried beneath the disappointment lies one of the most fascinating experiments in Tamil cinema, a deliberate, almost aggressive rejection of everything that makes a mass movie work. This isn't a film that failed to be commercial entertainment. This is a film that actively refused to be a commercial entertainer. Today, we are diving deep into what might be Mani Ratnam's most radical artistic statement. A film that gives its heroes no mass moments, refuses to manipulate its audience, and challenges the very foundations of how we consume cinema in the digital age. Before we can appreciate what Thug Life is doing, we need to understand what it's rejecting. Tamil cinema has perfected the art of mass movie. Films engineered for maximum emotional impact and audience participation. These are not just movies, they are events, experiences designed to make you whistle, clap, and cheer. The mass movie formula is precise. Give your hero a thunderous introduction with slow motion shots and pounding background music. Arm them with punch dialogues that become cultural catchphrases. Create moments of pure wish fulfillment where the protagonist single-handedly defeats armies of villains or delivers justice with superhuman efficiency. Most importantly, never let the audience think too hard. Keep them emotionally invested, riding the wave of carefully orchestrated highs and lows. This isn't accidental. It's a sophisticated form of emotional manipulation, and Tamil cinema has elevated it to an art form. From MGR's political messaging disguised as entertainment to Rajnikant's physics-defying heroics, the mass movie doesn't just tell stories, it creates legends. Now imagine taking this expectation machine and deliberately breaking it. That's exactly what Thug Life does with Kamal Haasan's character, Rangaraya Shaktivel. Here's a man who should by all rights get the full mass treatment. He is a feared gang leader, played by one of Indian cinema's greatest actors in a genre that particularly demands larger than life moments. Instead, Mani Sir introduces him with remarkable restraint. No slow motion swagger, no reverential camera angles worshipping at the altar of stardom, no punch dialogues that would trend on social media. This isn't Ratnam being lazy or uninspired. This is a conscious artistic choice. He is deliberately denying both Kamal Haasan and the audience the dopamine hit of conventional hero worship. This is film art, not a shrine to a star actor. But this restraint comes at a cost. The character can feel flatly and tamely realized, lacking the magnetic pull that made Nayakan's Shaktivel Nayakar so compelling. What's fascinating is how inconsistent this approach is within the film itself. While Kamal Haasan's character gets the restrained treatment, his on-screen son, Amaran, played by STR, receives a typical grandiose entry. It's as if Mani Sir is conducting an experiment in real time, showing us what happens when you strip away the mass elements from one character while maintaining them for another. Manisha's anti-mass approach extends beyond just the hero's portrayal. The film actively splits the narrative between too many characters to decentralize the power away from the stars. This is revolutionary in context of Tamil commercial cinema, where everything typically revolves around the central star. But here's where artistic ambition meets practical failure. While the intention to create a more democratic narrative space is admirable, the execution falls flat. This same approach worked wonders in Ponniyin Selvan, as each of the characters allowed you to build an emotional connect with them. Here, the supporting characters, despite being given more screen time, remain cardboard cutouts. You know who they are because you have seen many such characters, but you never find out what makes these particular ones special or memorable. When you remove the central gravitational pull of the hero, you need to create equally compelling alternatives. It's not enough to simply redistribute screen time if you don't also redistribute emotional investment. That said, perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Thug Life is its apparent refusal to emotionally manipulate its audience. In an era where films increasingly hammer at viewers with calculated emotional beats, Manisha seems to have made a conscious decision to step back and let the story breathe without artificial amplification. He is creating a deliberate distance between the characters and the audience. Not as much a distance as the other Mani Kaul used to create, but definitely something closer to what Tamil New Wave cinema has when led by likes of Vetrimaran. This creates a fascinating paradox. Even genuinely tragic moments in the film, like a character losing a daughter to suicide, barely hits us emotionally. The film's restraint reminds us of the emotional numbness we have developed to deal with the increasing violent nature of the society around us. This also raises profound questions about the nature of cinematic engagement. Is all emotional response in cinema a form of manipulation? Can you create meaningful art without some degree of audience manipulation? I do not know. To understand what Manisha might be attempting with Thug Life, we need to consider his evolution as a postmodern filmmaker. This isn't his first experiment with challenging audience expectations or conventional narrative structures. Look at Dil Se, which was initially dismissed as a commercial failure but has since been recognized as a masterpiece. The film's use of cognitive dissonance, juxtaposing romantic longing with political terrorism, created a deliberately uncomfortable viewing experience that challenged audiences' expectations about love stories. Similarly, Ravanan attempted to flip the moral universe of the Ramayana, presenting the traditionally villainous Ravana as a sympathetic figure and the heroic Ram as a potentially problematic authority figure. Both films were initially rejected by audiences but have found greater appreciation over time. Thug Life might be following this pattern, a work of art that takes time for audiences and critics to catch up to. Not all films live and die by the first weekend. My wife was amazed that Jiva does not ever recollect who Shakti Velu is. This is unheard of in mainstream cinema, but she did grow to appreciate this commitment to showing the hero having to pay the price for his immortality, if not for his other crimes. The film's refusal to provide easy emotional gratification might be less about artistic failure and more about artistic patience, waiting for an audience ready to engage with its specific form of cinematic discourse. There's something almost Brechtian about Thug Life's approach to audience engagement. Bertolt Brecht, I don't know how to pronounce his name. The concept of the distancing effect was designed to prevent audiences from becoming emotionally absorbed in the story, instead encouraging critical thinking about the social and political issues being presented. While Ratnam is not explicitly following the techniques, there's a similar philosophy at work. By refusing to give audiences the emotional highs they expect, the film forces a different kind of engagement. Instead of being swept along by carefully orchestrated feelings, viewers are compelled to think about what they are seeing, to question why they are not feeling what they expected to feel. This is particularly evident when compared to filmmakers like Vetrimaran, who create genuine distance through unflinching realism and social critique. Vetrimaran's film achieved critical distance by confronting audience with uncomfortable truths about society. Thug Life attempts something similar, but through stylistic restraint rather than brutal realism. But Thug Life isn't entirely consistent in its anti-mass approach, and this inconsistency might be its most telling feature. The film concludes with a hero worship song that completely contradicts its earlier restraint. Suddenly, after 2 hours of deliberately avoiding mass movements, the film gives in to conventional hero celebration, though it could as easily be a song from the hero to his wife. The dual nature of everything that is trademark Kamalism shining through. At the same time, this contradiction reveals the immense pressure that even auteur filmmakers face when working within the commercial system. As Bharadwaj Rangan noted, filmmakers with unique voices should not make movies with stars because the bigger business stakes and bigger fan bases can pull their work into compromising directions. The presence of this hero worship sequence doesn't necessarily invalidate the film's earlier experiments, but it does highlight the difficulty of maintaining artistic purity within commercial constraints. It's as if Mani Ratnam conducted his anti-mass experiment for most of the film, then blinked at the crucial moment. So is Thug Life a failure? Critically and commercially, the answer seems to be yes. The film was widely panned for its shallow characters, narrative opacity, and overall sense that in trying to say everything, the film ends up saying nothing that matters. But artistic failure and commercial failure are not always the same thing. Thug Life might have failed as broad-based entertainment, but it succeeds as an experiment. It proves that you can make a big-budget star vehicle that consciously rejects mass movie conventions. It demonstrates both the possibilities and limitations of such an approach. The film's failure might be less about the anti-mass approach itself and more about the execution. Removing conventional emotional hooks requires replacing them with something equally compelling. Thug Life's experiment in restraint wasn't paired with a sufficiently strong alternative framework for audience engagement. What makes Thug Life particularly interesting is how it functions as a postmodern text. It's a film that's aware of its own genre conventions and deliberately subverts them. It's a gangster movie that refuses to be a gangster movie, a star vehicle that undermines its own star. This self-awareness extends to the film's relationship with Ratnam's own legacy. By reuniting with Kamal Haasan nearly 4 decades after Nayakan, the film inevitably invites comparison with that earlier masterpiece. But instead of trying to recapture that magic, Thug Life seems determined to do something entirely different while employing the stereotypes that film made popular. Thug Life might not be a successful film by conventional measures, but it represents something potentially more valuable, a genuine artistic risk taken by established filmmakers at the height of their careers. In an industry increasingly driven by formula and fan service, Manisha's willingness to alienate audiences in service of an artistic vision is remarkable. The film's commercial and critical failure does not invalidate its experimental value. If anything, it proves how difficult it is to break free from established patterns of cinematic engagement. Mass movies work because they have been refined over decades to maximum efficiency. Creating alternatives requires not just rejecting what doesn't work, but building new frameworks for what does. Whether Thug Life will find greater appreciation over time, like Dilse and Ravanan before it, remains to be seen. But its very existence expands the possibilities of what commercial Tamil cinema can be, even in failure. In a landscape increasingly dominated by calculated crowd pleasers and algorithm friendly content, Thug Life stands as a reminder that cinema can still be a space for genuine artistic risk. It may not succeed in all its ambitions, but its willingness to fail in service of something more complex and challenging makes it a fascinating artifact of contemporary filmmaking. The question isn't whether Thug Life is a good film. The answer to that seems clear. The question is whether its particular form of artistic failure is more valuable than conventional commercial success. And in asking that question, the film has already achieved something more lasting than box office numbers or critical consensus. It has reminded us that cinema, at its very best, is not just entertainment, but a form of ongoing cultural conversation, one that sometimes requires saying no to what the audiences want in order to discover what they might need.